Now, the Korean War is called the Forgotten War because it is sandwiched between World War II and Vietnam, and there's a lot of great stories within the Korean War. So stories of heroism and tragedy. But among the Forgotten War, there's also the largely forgotten history of the Filipinos, who, after independence, wanted to help another nation free itself from an equally oppressive power. These guys were the 10th Battalion Combat Team of the Philippine Expeditionary Force, also known as PEFTOK. These guys were often veterans of World War II or people who joined the Philippine Army after the U.S. had granted their independence in 1946. The men of the 10th BCT had experience fighting communists during their own civil war against the Filipino communists known as the Hukbahala. It's a really hard thing for me to say, and I'm Filipino. But when the North Koreans invaded the South in June of 1950, and the UN called for troops to help defend South Korea from North Korean aggression, the Philippines was one of the first nations to sign up and send combat troops in the name of fighting international communism. Now, the 10th BCT consisted of roughly 1,372 men, comprising split up between an HQ company, a recon company, 3 rifle companies, and a tank or heavy weapons company. They shipped to Korea in September of 1950 after MacArthur had landed in Incheon and the Pusan breakout happened. Famously, the president of the Philippines went to the commander of the 10th BCT and gave him a folded Filipino flag and said, "The pride of our nation rests on your shoulders." So they landed in September of 1950, and the UN put them to work doing what they did best, and that was fighting communist guerrillas in the hills around South Korea. While the North Koreans are fleeing north across the 38th parallel, a large number of them stayed in South Korea fighting as guerrillas. One of these North Korean guerrilla forces hit the 10th BCT near the village of Mudong. This is on the road between Pusan and Seoul. The 10th BCT were under heavy fire, and the recon platoon commander inside of his Chaffee, the M24, ordered his driver to back the tank up to provide fire support. Problem was, the tank backed up into a ditch, and they could not bring the tank's main gun to bear. So the commander, First Sergeant Maximo Young, got out of his tank and got on the 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the M24, laid down suppressive fire, which allowed Able and Baker companies of the 10th BCT to fire and maneuver against the North Koreans. They lost 3 guys in this engagement, but they killed 40 North Koreans and captured several dozen more. Now, this is November 11th of 1950, and on November 20th, the 10th BCT was taken by the commander of the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team from the U.S., which was a violation of international law because the Filipinos were supposed to be fighting as their own independent unit. The commander of the 10th BCT sent a complaint to the president of the Philippines. The president of the Philippines sent a complaint to the UN. The UN complained to MacArthur, and MacArthur told the commander of the 10th BCT, "Hey, we heard you have a problem. What about that?" The commander said, "Well, I don't have enough winter clothing because it is November of 1950, and the coldest winter in 100 years is fast upon us. And also, where's my guys? They're supposed to be my men. Why is another commander commanding them? And MacArthur didn't really have a reason, but what he did was he relieved the commander, the current commander. He sent him home, and another commander took his spot. The 10th BCT would then participate in Operation Tomahawk, which is the last airborne jump into during the Korean War, to try and regain the initiative after the Chinese had come into the Korean War. A month after that, is the biggest claim to fame of the 10th BCT, and that is the Battle of Yultong. 900 Filipinos fought a battle against 40,000 Chinese troops. It's 40-1 odds. Brigade first, the Turks were forced to fall back, and the Filipinos soon found themselves surrounded by the Chinese. The Filipinos were ordered to withdraw, but they had a heavy weapons platoon that was caught between their lines and the Chinese. The company commander of this lost platoon then rallied some of the rifle companies to try and link up with and rescue that platoon, which he did. Sadly, while they were evacuating the wounded, this captain by the name of Conrado Yap, Captain Yap, was killed in action. But despite the odds, the Filipinos took a couple hundred casualties, while the Chinese lost a couple thousand. So in that case, who really won that battle? The Filipinos were forced to withdraw, but the Chinese lost significantly more men than the Filipinos did. There was that tenacity that MacArthur, there was that tenacity that they showed, which led MacArthur, who at that time been replaced already, led him to say, give me 10,000 Filipinos and I can take over the world.
Interesting story.
Now, the 10th BCT at this point did not have replacements to replace their dead and wounded, so they were rotated into the rear for further in case of further action, and they were sent home by October of 51 and were replaced by another battalion combat team. But these Filipinos who fought during this crucial time during the Korean War helped the South Koreans win their freedom from an oppressive government and helped them shape their own future. The relationships between the Filipinos and the Koreans are still very positive because of this, and there's monuments in Korea dedicated to the Filipinos who helped them secure their freedom.
Tell me a little bit about the equipment that's here on the table. Would you mind?
The equipment here is a bunch of World War II holdovers, because this is September 1950 all the way to the spring of 51. These are weapons that the North Koreans and the Chinese and the Americans and Filipinos would have been using during their various engagements. Now, the communist forces would have been using Russian, I wouldn't say Russian-made weapons, but weapons of Russian origin. They would use Mosin Nagants, SVT-40s, and SKSs, and some of the most prominent weapons that were seen were the Russian-made or Russian origin PPSH-41s with 800 rounds, which fired at 800 rounds a minute.
Which one is that?
It is this submachine gun right here. Yeah, it often is seen with a drum magazine, but I have seen pictures with them using these 32-round box magazines. The communist forces loved the PPSH because of its fast fire rate and because they used human wave tactics where they sent bodies against machine guns, but oftentimes manpower and firepower would overrun UN positions. Now, the Filipinos and the Americans were using their own World War II weapons. The M1 rifle here was the primary arm of the Filipinos. There were a lot of them are still using Springfields, Thompsons that the Americans had gotten rid of and replaced with, not gotten rid of, but replaced them largely in service with the M3 and M1 carbines, which they liked a lot more. One of the only Filipino weapons that they brought into combat with them was their bolo knives. Okay. This is to the Filipinos what the katana is to the Japanese. The Americans first encountered them during the Philippine-American War, and this has become a symbol of Filipino fighting spirit ever since. These were not standard issue as far as I know, but there is a picture of a Filipino tank crew posing with their bolos in one of the winters of the Korean War. So these were there. They might have seen use, not entirely sure. But if a Chinese or North Korean came at you at bayonet range and you didn't have your rifle, but you had this on you, this would do the job. So most of this is all World War II in origin, but by the end of the Korean War, you would start seeing Chinese Type 56s, which are the Chinese equivalent of the AK, starting to appear in North Korea in 1953. On this table behind me is a collection of equipment that the Filipinos would have been using during the Korean War, at least the 10th BCT. A lot of them had bare helmets, but you see a lot of the Allied forces using helmets that had cargo netting on them to break up the shine, put camouflage in. The Americans largely abandoned helmet nets after the end of World War II, but a lot of the Allied troops were using cargo nets. And then these were more common towards the end of the war, but I have seen pictures of soldiers on the Busan perimeter using these. This is a makeshift burlap helmet cover made primarily out of cut-up sandbags or rice sacks. This got rid of the helmet glare, and if you put enough dirt on it and you were in the right environment, this could look like your fighting environment. Now, something that kind of separates the Korean War from World War II was the cold winter that they had. In the winter of 1950 to 51 was the coldest winter that Korea had seen in a long time. And especially in the mountains, the temperatures got down to minus 24 degrees, I think, Fahrenheit. It was what they say Arctic conditions. So you would stack, the men would have long john sweaters, their field jackets, but also be issued parkas. This is a Marine Corps parka, but the Army had something similar to this in order to try and stay warm, and they also were issued shoe packs. These are modern-day LL Bean boots, but these are the same pattern that the Americans would have used in their shoe packs. So despite all the winter clothing that the Filipinos and the UN troops got, number one, they didn't have enough of them, and number two, they were still woefully underprepared, and a lot of the casualties during that winter were cold casualties rather than combat casualties. But this is the equipment that the 10th BCT would have used. 4 other battalion combat teams, Filipino battalion combat teams would participate in the Korean War, but their equipment would have been slightly different than this. But that was the history of PEFTOK and how, despite once they got their independence, the Filipinos wanted to help their fellow Asian comrades defend their independence and liberties as well.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.